So, the Knuckles show recently came out, and a lot of people either really like this show or really hate it. So, I watched it with Platinum YouTuber Aphtin, and we thought we'd give our thoughts on it. So, yeah, enjoy. Episode 1, The Warrior, starts out with Knuckles running through this really awesome training course, and it really feels like something you'd see in the games, especially with the spinning sign at the end. At the end of the course, Knuckles overhears something going on at Maddie's house. He rushes over and just brutally harasses these poor construction workers. And to celebrate his victory of terrorizing some innocent people, he pours a bag of Cool Ranch Doritos into his mouth, with about 60% of the chips completely missing his mouth. Then Sonic has a talk with Knuckles about enjoying Earth rather than always being on the search to be a warrior. Then Knuckles sits on that idea for the entire day. And Knuckles has his idea of enjoying Earth, which is, making the house into a battle arena? Which backfires horribly and Knuckles gets grounded. Then we move over to Wade Whipple. He's training for his own tournament, a bowling tournament. As he's practicing, he gets hit with the 9 pins down and the 10th pin spinning forever, and then he gets kicked off his bowling team because of it. And Jack Sinclair gives him an animated business card, which I love. Just the idea of living in a world where someone can hand you a card and it just starts talking to you is so funny. But back to Knuckles. He is lying in the attic, defeated. And then we have this scene. Why? Then Knuckles asks the ancient echidnas for guidance, and then Christopher Lloyd spawns. Chief Hamachikama. Pshormizma. Chakamaka. Anyway, he gets up to greet Knuckles and then he falls into the backrooms. But Pachakamacadoo sends Knuckles on a mission to train a warrior, Wade. Knuckles rushes over to Wade's house as he's about to die lifting weights, and after he saves Wade's life, he throws the dumbbell back at him and then he dies. They go on a car ride and Wade has this brilliant line.
Knock knock, you gotta say who's there.
Who's there?
Nicolas Cage.
Then we have the main threats in the show, Agent Willoughby, Agent Mason, and the Buyer. I think the only problem with these characters in this show is that we never actually get to know their names. The only reasons I know their names is because of the Meet the Cast video where it displays the actors and who they play as. The show does not at all state their names other than Agent Willoughby, and I think that is a small problem, especially since we don't even know a lot about these characters. We know the Buyer worked for Robotnik, but once Sonic came to Earth, Robotnik cut ties with the Buyer. And the reason he wants Knuckles' power is also sorta unclear. We know he needs it to power his giant robot we'll see later down the line, but that's about it. It's never really stated what he needs the robot for. World domination? Just to kill Sonic and Tails? We aren't so sure, and I think that's the only thing wrong with the antagonists of this show. But let's move back to the stars of this show, Wade and Knuckles. They arrive at the bowling alley where Wade tells Knuckles that his father was a master bowler but abandoned him at a TJ Maxx, and that's why Wade has been obsessed with bowling his whole life. It's the only thing that makes him feel at home. So as they go to practice some bowling, we are yet again greeted with the gun agents, and Wade almost dies within 2 seconds of them meeting, but Knuckles saves him and then has an epic fight with them. We get a nice reference to the first Sonic and Knuckles interaction with this scene.
Do I look like I need your power? Do I look like I need your power?
And I must say, the agents took some heavy blows and probably could have died if they didn't have armor. Plot armor. Eh? Anybody? Hello?
Episode 2 of the Knuckles Show is when things start to get really fun. The entire episode is just our goat, Wade Whipple, trying to save a captured Knuckles from that one gun agent girl whose name I kinda forgot. The episode is just really stupid, but in a good way. Actually, in an amazing way. Although, the general consensus seems to think the opposite. This episode is a downhill point for a lot of people, and I think that's because Knuckles doesn't really do much. I mean, yeah, he talks a lot, but all he does in 90% of the episode is just sit in a tiny cage. Knuckles doesn't try to break out on his own or fight Kid Cudi again. He just sits there, while Wade is the one to do all the fun action stuff. Now, this wouldn't be a big problem to many if the name of the show wasn't, Knuckles. Thankfully though, unlike most others, I actually really like Wade. I find him to be a very funny and relatable character. I liked him in the first movie and the second movie. So this episode, and others that we'll soon talk about, don't really bother me at all. In fact, I think this episode is actually carried by Wade. Like, look at the dream sequence Wade has when he thinks of how he'll save Knuckles, and tell me that isn't funny. And then him immediately messing up his plan before he even steps foot into where the gun agents are. Like, come on, that's funny. I don't know, maybe I'm just like a baby with jingly keys, but Wade is just a humorous little fella. I will admit though, when Wade actually begins fighting Kid Cudi and the random lady, it does feel a bit, how do I put it? Live action Nickelodeon-y, and not the good ones like iCarly. I mean like the Fairly Odd Parents starring Drake Bell as Timmy Turner. Those ones. Yeah, the fight scene just felt dumb. Even though they did have funny moments sprinkled in, like when Kid Cudi's mom called in the middle of the battle.
Yeah, that's just a work friend.
Oh, you think we're friends?
After Wade explodes the place, freeing Knuckles from his cage and somehow not getting hurt in the explosion, while the other two gun agents do get affected from it, which, like, that was a pretty big explosion, you know? How did Wade not get turned into a bunch of tiny whipples? Whatever, man. Knuckles and Wade leave the scene by having Wade ride on Knuckles while he does his gliding ability. Like from the games! Oh my god! And on their drive back to the Whipple family house, they hear on the radio that Wade now has a bounty over his head because, you know, he blew up a house. But this gives us the best moment of the Knuckles show so far. Ladies and gentlemen, the Wade Pod.
Wade Whipple. You remember this guy? He was the sheriff's deputy who won the Hot Pocket eating contest at last year's Springfest. That guy.
Episode 3, The Shabbat Dinner. This episode honestly has to be my favorite next to episode 4, which we'll get into, but this episode is just jam-packed with action and heartfelt moments, and I love how the characters interact with each other in this episode. Their great interactions really show during the Shabbat Dinner. During the dinner, everyone interacts with each other so well, specifically Wade's mother and Knuckles, and Wade and his sister Wanda. Knuckles and Wade's mom having the more heartfelt scenes, like when Knuckles talks about his tribe being wiped out by giant owls, and Wade's mom responding by referencing the Holocaust.
Now the last of my tribe.
Oh. Our tribe has been through some tough times, too. Minus the giant owls. He's basically Jewish.
But Wade and Wanda having the more chaotic scenes.
Oh! Oh! Ow!
But once the Shabbat dinner ends with classic Whipple family arguments, Knuckles goes and has a talk with Wade's mother. And they have a heartfelt conversation about the Whipple family and how nice it used to be with all them together, and how now the family has just drifted apart. But after they talk, the mother puts down the candles as one of the coolest scenes is about to play, and before that, I want to talk about the book Wanda is reading because it is so funny. The book on how to not get snuck up on, as 4 people, who are hired by the buyer, are about to break into their house. One guy sneaks into Wade's room and then Wade gets violated with the meanest slap I've ever seen. But then as Wade is about to get shocked, Knuckles comes in with such a cool entrance. Glowing red electricity coming out of his hands, his intimidating red glow, and then Knuckles just hits this man with the most disgusting punch ever. Then we get another scene with one of the hunters, but it's lame because it's just Wanda. The last 2 hunters and Wade's mom are about to have such a cool fight, and then Knuckles comes in, and it ends up being one of, if not the best scene in the entire show. The spinning camera with the Jewish music and the entire house getting absolutely demolished. And all of this just to protect the candles from going out. This scene is actually amazing, and it's such a good scene to rewatch. Also, we get to see this man get hit with the oldest trick in the book, which is always nice to see. And after all the fighting is settled down and the candles go out, the episode ends. Overall, this is just a really great episode. The action is good, it has great funny moments, the characters work super well with each other, touching moments, and it is just really awesome in general. 9 out of 10 for this episode easily. My only complaint is that we were introduced to Wade's mom and Wanda, and we learn about the family a little bit, but after this episode, it's never really expanded on, and I think it would have been really cool to see what they could have done with these characters. Regardless, this has to be my second favorite episode, right next to...
This is it. This is the peak of the Knuckles Show. Episode 4, The Flames of Disaster. This episode is by far the best one out of them all, even though it features Knuckles for like a total of 30 seconds. And you know what's funny? This episode is actually the most hated, being called the worst episode of the Knuckles Show, and some even saying it's the worst Sonic media of all time, which I personally don't get, because the entire episode is so fun. It starts with Wade waking up in his sorta, kinda, maybe destroyed bedroom, where he all of a sudden gets captured by a bounty hunter. That bounty hunter being his former best friend from the very first episode. I bet you forgot him, did you? I for sure did. And look, he's even wearing Knuckles' cowboy hat from the Sonic OVA. Anyways, after Wade gets captured by his former best friend, whose name I don't know, so I'm gonna call him the OVA guy, it's Wade's turn to get trapped in the cage, where he falls unconscious and enters a dream world. In this dream world, he meets Chief Pachacamac. I bet you forgot about this guy too. This episode is the GOAT of bringing back characters who appeared in episode 1 and never appear again. Here, Pachacamac tells Wade that in order to save himself from the OVA guy, he must go through Knuckles' backstory in a rock opera musical. Wade and him have a back and forth before Pachacamac hits him with a gay beam, and oh my god, Wade is in Knuckles' skin! And now this, right here, is when this episode turns from an to a 10 out of 10 peak cinema. Just like that, the rock opera immediately starts playing, retelling the events of Knuckles' backstory, which we saw a few flashbacks to in the second movie. We see the Owl Tribe kill Knuckles' dad, who turns into a puppet for one shot and then turns back into an actor, which is, like, really funny. And now this is a giant lore drop, but after Knuckles lost an entire family, he travels across his home world to find the Flames of Disaster, which is, by the way, beautifully sung by
Michael Bolton, everyone!
And how does he get the Flames of Disaster? Simple. He fights a giant lava monster called Iblis, which is actually something from Sonic 06, which, you know, I never expected to get ever referenced in a Sonic movie. Well, it's not a movie, but it's a show. You get what I mean! And this is where people's disdain for the episode comes in. People hate the episode because not only is Knuckles barely in it, but it also shows us a way cooler idea for a show plot than what we actually have. Which is, you know, like a fair point, but me personally, I don't think it's that big of a deal that we didn't get a show about Knuckles fighting Iblis. Would it have been absolutely amazing and cooler than what we have right now? Admittedly, yes. Does this make what we have right now complete? No, not really. And I mean, really. If the show was about Knuckles fighting Iblis and not Knuckles and Wade doing stupid whatever, we wouldn't have this banger of a musical. Like, genuinely, this song is really catchy for no reason. Michael Bolton and the rest of the singers did an absolutely amazing job. The visuals as well are phenomenal, with the poorly recreated Angel Island, Sonic 2 Special Zone, and the funny Iblis puppet. It's all awesome. But sadly, all good things must come to an end, or become slightly less good in this case, as the music comes to an abrupt stop when Wade somehow launches himself out of the cage that he was trapped in. This quickly turns into a duel between Wade and the OVA guy, where both try and kill each other with katanas. Like, okay, can we talk about how willing Wade was to actually decapitate the OVA guy? Like, if the OVA guy didn't duck in the last second, Wade would have cut his head clean off. Damn, this show gets brutal sometimes. After Wade wins the duel though, he comes back to the Whipple house with his new stolen motorcycle and that fresh OVA cowboy hat that Knuckles soon puts on his head. The episode ends with them driving to the bowling tournament where Wade and Knuckles will finally probably fulfill their wish of murdering someone. Awesome.
Episode 5 starts out with Wade and Knuckles finally arriving at Reno. As they enter the casino to confront Wade's father, as he steps out, they realize that is Dr. Gordon. So this is what happened to Gordon after Saw. When we first watched this, we actually freaked out once we realized that Wade's father was Lawrence Gordon from the Saw franchise. And unlike his acting in those movies, his acting as Pistol Pete is actually pretty bearable. He fits the role and does the whole overconfident fake British persona very well. Once Wade actually goes to talk to Pete, the whole sequence is just hilarious. It's so awkward how Wade talks like how Knuckles would to his father. It looks like he just wants to leave the situation as fast as possible. And then halfway in, Knuckles starts talking to this red, thing.
Oh, right. They play in Albuquerque, right? Go Kidneys!
Anyways, we cut from this to the agents getting put in front of the buyer because they failed to bring Knuckles to him within the 24 hours. And honestly, I really wanted to go back to the bowling at this point. I don't know why, but I got really invested in Wade and his father's relationship that I just wanted to see more of it. Regardless, this scene is still pretty good. This is the episode where Agent Willoughby and the buyer give more backstory. But I feel that they should have established these characters a little better, having their backstory been told a lot sooner, especially with something we got into in episode 6. But for the agent's sake, I wish we learned about them a lot sooner so we know their motivations and why they were actually working for Gunn. Anyways, the buyer lets them go and we get back to the important part, the bowling. This section in itself isn't too crazy because, well, it's just bowling, but we still have some great things, like Pistol Pete's bowling ball having a teacup in it. It's so random and it's just a funny thing to notice. And then Wade hits the Fortnite, and we're done with the part of bowling that is not the finals. They somehow managed to make just simple bowling not entirely boring, which I love. After the bowling, Wade talks to his father and asks why he abandoned him. And Pistol Pete responds by saying that the true reason he left was because he was kidnapped by a dying old man named John and he helped Pistol Pete appreciate his life more and that's why he became a professional bowler. And I guess he never forgot about him because he still had Wade load mixtapes. This show somehow manages to fit these small, heartfelt moments in every episode that are just so great. So after this, Pete invites Wade into his master suite. And then in a shocking turn of events, Pete was working with the Gunn agents to get Wade so they could get Knuckles. My one problem with this scene is the fact that Wade walks by the room his mother and sister are supposed to be in, and the agents couldn't have walked in after because they surely would have heard the door open. And they also would not have the time to restrain two people, get chairs, tie them both up, and pose menacingly without making a sound. You could argue that Wade just didn't see them, which is probably what happened, but how did Wade not see them because he literally looked in the room where they're supposed to be in? They would be in the corner of his eye and he should have noticed. What were we talking about? Alright, Pistol Pete is working with the bad guys, and the agents are gonna kill Wade's family unless he gives them Knuckles. Agent Willoughby threatens Wade by threatening to shoot his sister, and he's entirely fine with that.
I'm okay with that. Do whatever you gotta do to her.
But once they threaten his mother, he caves in and goes to get Knuckles. I think that the scene taking place in Pistol Pete's penthouse is kind of weird because he was just a character that was introduced, and he didn't really seem like the kind of character to fit into this agent stuff wanting Knuckles. But what happens after this is just set up so well. Episode 6 starts right where Episode 5 left off, and we see that Knuckles is sent up to the penthouse, and Agent Willoughby just... And I just wanted to know why they did this, because I thought they needed Knuckles alive to take his power. So if he was, like, dead, I don't think they could do that. Anyways, we see what happened in the elevator, and oh, the funny costume guy! Oh, hey, Knuckles is on the roof. And plot twist, he was listening the entire time. And it is about to go down. Other than the Shabbat dinner table scene, this has to be my favorite fight because it's just very fast-paced and it works very well here. And I love how Willoughby tries to hit Knuckles with the same thing that caught him last time, that being with the rings. But they end up getting thrown into the portal and then it just disappears and they're never seen again. Where did they go? Did they die? Are we just going to gloss over the fact that these people probably died and will never be seen again? Yes. Yes, we do actually, because we move right back into the bowling. Which isn't a whole lot interesting itself, but the character interactions between bowls makes me actually care for these parts of the show. But this is it. The finale of the Reno Bowling Championship. Whipple versus Whipple. They bowl a few times, but we get this shot from Pete, where we get a fantastic shot of this slow-mo ball with a teacup in it, which I still love. But the actual shot doesn't go that well for him. Getting a callback to the first episode where the exact same thing happened to Wade while practicing. It's the small things like this that is always just a nice touch when you remember them. But when Wade takes the shot, the same thing happens to him. Slow-mo, very tense, shot of Wade that I laughed at for some reason, and then it falls over. Wade winning the championship, and oh my god, that's Knuckles, fighting the buyer. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, he arrived here a little while ago. But I think, like I mentioned before, they should have established these characters better because I don't know why the buyer is here, I don't know who he is, I don't know his motivations, I just don't know anything about him. I think this is just a general problem with shows because we don't get to establish the villains enough since we can't just take the focus off of the main characters for a long period of time in a 30-minute episode. And I know people are gonna say episode 4 did the same thing with it solely focusing on Wade, but Wade kind of is a main character in this show. I get it's called the Knuckles show, but Knuckles' whole goal in this show is to train Wade Whipple, so Wade kinda has to be a prominent character. So it is okay that Wade had a standalone episode because he is a main character. But with all that said, I get why they can't do a standalone episodes about the gun agents and the buyer, but I just wish they could so we could get to know these characters better and have this final fight with Wade, Knuckles, and the buyer more impactful. Especially because of how short the fight was, it felt a bit underwhelming. So that was the Knuckles show. What'd you think of it, Aphtin?
I thought it was a pretty good show. I thought Wade was amazing. What was your favorite part of the show?
Honestly, episode 4 was just literally the best.
Yes, it was. A musical, clearly the best part of the Sonic movie franchise.
Yeah, it was just really fun, and the people who said it was the worst episode, you just don't like fun. But, yeah.
Yes, you don't like fun. You're not whimsy or fun. This was better than Sonic Movie 1 and Sonic Movie 2.
Yeah, honestly,
It's because of Wade.
like, not even joking, I enjoyed this more than Sonic 2.
Not gonna lie, me too, yeah.
Yeah, it was just more fun. I like Wade more than Tom, and then Knuckles just...
Wade's funnier than Tom, and Knuckles is funnier than Sonic, so obviously.
Like, episode 5 and 6, they just get really good in depth with, like, Wade and his father's story. I got really invested into that. So, the show, what would you rate this show overall?
I'd rate it a 9 out of 10.
For me, it's like an 8 out of 10. Yeah.